Hello from Washington, D.C. This is Jim Moore, the president and founder of the Washington Institute for Business, Government, and Society. And I am delighted that we have today with us Dragan, Sutanovac, who one time was the defense minister of Serbia, the chairman of the Democratic Party in Serbia, and has had an extraordinary career. I'm delighted that he is taking the time to be with us today to be able to talk about this extraordinary moment in human history, namely the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And good morning from Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon from Belgrade.
Wonderful. You know, this is an extraordinary moment, in human history. The world has been hit by the coronavirus. We're trying to confront climate change. And then all of a sudden, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, decides that it's about time for him to invade Ukraine, that he has this sense of history that is in his own mind. How have you, from your vantage point, been able to assess the situation, why it occurred, what is transpiring now, and where you think that this is going to end?
The last part of question is the most difficult question. I believe where it's going to end, nobody knows. But let's move a little bit in the past.
Please.
Since 2007, when was the Bucharest summit, NATO summit, where Georgia and Ukraine attended to become members of NATO, we saw that the Russians were not so happy, and after that, in 2008, we had the first invasion. That invasion was not so high and big like this one, and was not so important to the world, but Georgia was attacked by Russians, and they separate two so-called republics, and that was 2008. It was very visible for the people who are dealing with security issues in the region now that it's possible that after Georgia, that Putin will make some moves towards Ukraine. And it started in 2014 with secession of Crimea and with occupation of some parts of Donetsk and Lugansk, And for the last 8 years, it was like not just frozen conflict, it was serious conflict, but was not so visible from the Europe or from the States. Sometimes it looks to me that people did not realize what was happening there. If the Europe and the States started to help them before, and started to equip them before, I truly believe that we wouldn't have this kind of invasion, because even now, when Putin started that, the Ukrainian military was not so wealthy like it's now. But at the end, you see that they have a lot of damages on the battlefield. What I think, I think that Putin made a bad estimate. Basically, he had, I think, the wrong intelligence and bad information. When I said intelligence, I think on the military intelligence, and also for diplomatic intelligence or information, I can make 4 topics where he missed the point. First one was that it looks like that he had information that the Ukrainian people will make a warm welcome to the Russian military.
Oh.
And according to some opinion polls, that there were some people over there who were not happy with this government, and they were supportive of ex-president who was pro-Russian president, but they are Ukrainians, and they don't want to be occupied by anyone else. The secondly, he made a bad estimate according to military intelligence, and they thought that the military amounts of Ukrainian side, it's not so high, but they faced with very serious guys, and very serious, I can say warriors, fighting. That's something we didn't see it since 1940s, in Europe. Also, what was the bad estimate, I think that nobody in Moscow expected to have such a quick response from EU and other parts of the world. Basically, most of EU, because the Europeans are here and the war is in front of their home. So these sanctions which come and this aid which goes to Ukraine is something what somehow shocked Moscow, because they thought that they can split Europe and they can split NATO, and that the decisions won't be so unique as they did it. And finally, I think that now after the Second World War, for the first time, we can see the real military amount of Russian soldiers, Russian equipment, etc. And this is not on the level as we expected. Yeah. They have, we can say that they have good scientists, they have some good products, they have some military equipment like these rockets, etc. But at the end, the whole military, it's not in good shape, and they so far they lost between 10 and 12 generals, and if you saw this last parade on the 9th of May, that the General Gerasimov, who was the chief of staff, he did not attend, because there was some rumor that he is even wounded in this war. So I think that all these informations and bad intelligence makes Putin in position to make bad moves, and to make bad decisions, to make aggression on Ukraine. Yeah. Also, in the first weeks of this war, he sent a conscript military in Ukraine. I've seen many videos, and some of them said that they thought they are on the military training, they didn't even know where they're going, and they expect the people are waiting for them there with the flowers, and they were very shocked, So I think that so far it's going for him very bad. Of course, the worst is for Ukrainian people, and it's very interesting when you see that around 4 million Russians left Russia in the last 3 months, So it means that they are not so happy with things which going on in Ukraine.
Yes, indeed. May I also say that we have quite a group of people that are watching this from around the world right now, and if anybody has any questions, please do not hesitate to ask, and I'll be glad to pose those questions. It's quite something Ukraine is a fairly large country, and of course, it has been known by many as the breadbasket of the world because of its wheat production and other crops. But at the same time, we're talking about a country like Russia that spans 11 time zones. It is staggering to realize that they have had the kind of problems that they have had in being able to invade Ukraine, and it's rather extraordinary. And of course, the sanctions that have been imposed by the West, and you and I had the chance to talk about the fact that McDonald's now has closed. I think it's 800 restaurants across the country. I remember when McDonald's opened their very first restaurant in Moscow. I actually had an apartment that was a few blocks away from it. And I can remember that opening day when people stood in line, and it went on for blocks and blocks. You had to get into a car to be able to really see how far that line extended. It was a very long walk if you decided otherwise, and now it's going to be gone. And they're talking about somehow substituting something called Uncle Vanya for some of these McDonald's restaurants, but the problem is massive, and it's going to go on for a very long time. Tell me this. One of the interesting things, of course, is that we've watched President Orban of Hungary, and to a certain extent, Serbia's president, show a certain amount of reluctance in being able to criticize Vladimir Putin for the invasion. And those of us in the West, the United States in particular, are simply trying to figure out why, when it's so obvious that it was an invasion of a country that was Ukraine did little to be able to provoke such a response on the part of Russia. How has this developed in Serbia, where there seems to be a divide in terms of the thinking about Vladimir Putin, Russia, and the invasion?
First of all, you have to know that for the last decade, President Vučić met Putin, I think, 19 times.
Wow.
President Putin came to Belgrade several times. Mr. Medvedev, as a prime minister, came to Belgrade several times. And when I speak with my friends from the States, when they ask me about relationship between Serbia and Russia, I always told them, don't worry about this relationship. Worry about relationship about Washington, between Washington and Belgrade. And for the last decade, we didn't have a senior visits from US to Belgrade, And we are expecting to have someone, let's say, high representative, not just Karen Dofrit, she was here, but she's assistant to secretary. We expect to have some important visits from the States, because this is the way how you build friendship and trust,
Sure.
between. Also, what is very important to know that so far, Serbia did not have problems with Russia, as we had with some part of Western world. We have even Putin said so, about Kosovo, and he mentioned for these two territories in Ukraine and comparing Kosovo with this, and he said this is the same principles, which is actually, I think it's not, but anyhow, here, the emotions among the people towards Russia, it's not the same like in other countries in Europe. But you have to know that Serbia representative in UN, we voted for all decisions towards Russia. We were in alliance with the Western world, and we were not like four countries, this Syria, North Korea, Belarus, and Eritrea who voted against. So we supported all resolutions in UN. It's clear, and the president said several times that we are fully dedicated to Euro integrations, and our path is over there. But it's not easy, just to cut it in a day. And also, we depend on 90 more percent, 90+% of Russian gas. So far, we didn't have solutions, and this is not the same like for the others. For some others who are not depending so much, it's easier. But how to survive, and I think that we are now trying to find a way with the Western world, how to avoid so many damages, in economy, because we are still a young democracy and we are still a country which is developing, and we still don't have this kind of economy which can again have these problems like we had before.
Yes, indeed. How would you describe the response on the part of Ukraine? I think the world has been amazed that Ukraine still is standing, that it still has a government in place. What do you attribute that to?
I must say that even with some experts, which I spoke before with them, they told me in 2 weeks Russians can occupy the Ukraine, and in 2 weeks they're going to take all east land from River Dnieper, But when the states offer to Zelensky to leave the country, and they offer to lift him out of Ukraine, and he said, "I don't need lift, I need arms, and aid."
Yes.
It was clear that they're going to fight, And this is something what you can like them or you don't like them, doesn't matter, but they are real fighters, and what they are doing right now, we have to adore them, and this is something what it's very, very visible.
Yeah.
Also, you have to know that in this conflict in Donetsk and Lugansk, for the last 8 years, 900 Ukrainians were involved. 900,000, sorry. 900,000 Ukrainians were involved. 900,000 people who were trained to participate in military operations over there. So, it was not so easy, and it's not easy to make a fight with fully dedicated people and people with a big morale, who are defending their homes. And you remember from the first days when in some towns, the Russian troops, they came into without any fight, but civilians came on the streets, and told them, go back, go home. We don't want to see you here, etc. So this is something what amazed a lot of people, and really I can say that it's not because we were in war, with 20 few years ago. It's very difficult to imagine how it looks like, and to participate even it's worse. So they are doing their best, and really I don't know what to say. Then they did a great job, to defend their homes.
Do you think it's fair to say that the entire region, if not the world, has changed for many years to come as a result of this invasion?
When you say the entire region, you mean the region of East Europe, or you mean the region of
East Europe, Eastern Europe?
Yeah, entire region changed, and I think the perspective from any country over there, it's changed, and not just there. Take a look, in UN, only 4 countries voted, let's say, to defend Russia. Even Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the other countries which are on the Far East, they didn't support it, So the changing, they seem that something is wrong. Although just weeks before, we had in Kazakhstan the intervention of Russian military in a way to secure the president and prime minister of Kazakhstan these days. That was just few before, and the Kazakhstan did not vote with them, in UN. So the things are changing, and the whole Europe is changing. Take a look, we have yesterday and I think today, Finland and Sweden, they officially applied to NATO membership. The Sweden, they were more than 200 years non-aligned.
Yes.
And the Putin made such a big marketing on NATO, for them that they in few weeks they decide to join in. And also, as I know, there are some debates in Ireland, there are some debates in Austria, even in Switzerland, which is amazing. That people realize that it's very important to become a part of something what we call common security organization. And what is also interesting to know that before, and I believe in the future also, they never had any conflict between countries in the NATO. So this is something is guarantee for security and stability for anyone who is inside.
I think one of the great quotes from this period will be one from the president of Finland, who said that if ever he is asked by Vladimir Putin, why did Finland join NATO? And his response would be, look in the mirror.
I read yesterday in Politico that Putin said that he doesn't have any problem about Finland and Swedish accession to NATO. He has a problem if they bring the nuclear power arms over there. But at the same time, the mad dogs around him, they are sending such a bad messages, not towards just Finland and Sweden. They're sending bad messages to whole Europe, And I don't know if you saw what's going on in TV in Russia.
Yes.
That's something what it's very difficult even to imagine what's going on over there.
Yes. Question has come in, and that is, what about Serbia's future as far as, and I know you have been a great supporter of accession, not only to NATO, but to the European Union. Where do you think that stands?
I think that we are, let's say, in the process of solving some problems. And the most important problem for us is Kosovo. Now, Kosovo it's a very painful issue for any democratic government since 2000. And we are in process of negotiation process with Kosovo. The problem is that we have a guy who's the prime minister of Kosovo who do not pay respect on real situation, who do not pay respect on some agreements which we signed in Brussels and also in Washington, before some years, Simply he behaved like the Kosovo started with him. And we signed in 2012, we signed an agreement in Brussels. According to this agreement, they didn't fulfill almost anything, And he said that he doesn't care. This is almost the same situation is with the Washington agreement. So I think that we have to find a way how to manage some solution, And I expect big help from the States, and they have a new ambassador here, Mr. Hill, Christopher Hill, a very famous guy in the region and in the States also. And I believe that Europe now, which is more united than ever before, they'll try much more. What happened in this war? The EU recognized as a bureaucracy. Finally, they show that they don't need to be bureaucracy, in this time. Usually, with them, you never know. You have to wait, decision, prime ministers, I don't know who else, But right now, they show that they can move, they can act very fast. So I expect that we can find some solutions for Kosovo and for Serbia. And also, we are dedicated, almost 2/3 of the parliamentarian groups are in favor of European Union integration. So I believe that we are moving, and this is the only way which is solid for Serbia and for the people in Serbia.
Yes, indeed. To change the subject, and questions have been coming in on this. I think the world was surprised, certainly, by the resilience of the Ukrainian people in being able to ward off Russia the way that it has been. The other surprise has been the welcoming of so many refugees from Ukraine throughout Eastern Europe. Poland is an example where, given where it is geographically, millions poured into Poland. What do you attribute that sort of response on the part of Europeans? We've seen that immigration has been a great problem throughout Europe, as it has here in the United States. But on this particular occasion, the humanitarian crisis has been incredibly severe, but Eastern Europe certainly has been very welcoming in being able to have people stay in their homes, to have them contribute monies as well as supplies to be able to support those who have found that their homes no longer exist in Ukraine. What do you attribute all this to?
Oh, well, when you say immigrants, usually you think from the Middle East, North Africa, etc. But this is completely different. And also for the Europeans, when you said you have some immigrants from Middle East, and you see that you have some guys from Pakistan, which are not immigrants because of the war, they are economic immigrants, that caused some problems for the people, But this time, I think it's very obvious to the people that it's a huge war over there with the enormous destruction, And also, what is I think important, not personally, but I think it's important for the people, that they are Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainians are our neighbors, they are our colleagues over here, And we have what is interesting, in Belgrade. I didn't see official results, but there are many and Russians and Ukrainians. When you meet them on the street or in the restaurants, you don't know actually who's Ukrainian, who's Russian. They speak very similar language. For us, it's almost the same, but they are here. And what I remember from the past, the first wave of immigrants, they are coming the wealthy people who have some savings. They are living in the war zone, etc. And with them, it's easier to manage the problems. But after, when the poor people have to leave, and when they are coming, and that can cause a problem, because you need to offer them solutions which simply have problem in your own country, So this, I'm not sure still that will happen, because Ukraine is a great country. It's a big country. After the Russia is the biggest country in Europe, 44 million people. This is really great country. But we'll see what will happen in the future. But anyhow, Ukrainians are let's say Europeans, and I think that for most of the people who were scared, and I don't know why they were afraid of immigrants from Middle East or from Far East, with them they don't have this kind of problem.
Yes, indeed.
Because I remember some nationalist parties even in my country, and nationalist parties in Europe, when we had immigrants from Middle East and Far East, they were against. Now they are quiet. They don't attack, because they realize that people cannot cause any problems, But anyhow, problems even with another immigrants, in Serbia.
Mm-hmm. Has Serbia been accepting Ukrainian refugees?
They are here. I don't know how it works officially. Do they have to come here to authorities and to say so or not? Because we do not have a visa regime. They can travel in Serbia without any problem. So there are a lot of streets. On streets, you can hear the language, and Russians and Ukrainians. When I say Russian, some people are angry. Those guys who left Russia, they are not in favor of war. They are people who left Russia because of the war.
Yes,
and this sometimes it's not correct, to attack even them, because they left the country because they did not support the war.
Yes. Some have suggested, and I know this opens up a can of worms, that there is, and that this is very much in President Putin's mind, that this is somewhat of a moral, religious crusade, that the West is the devil, and that the Orthodox Church, particularly the Moscow Russian Orthodox Church, is really trying to hold the moral values of Christianity, and that the rest of the world is not following in line. And of course, there you are. There's the Orthodox Church in Serbia. There's in Greece and Turkey, etc. How do you respond to this notion that somehow Vladimir Putin and the Patriarch of Moscow, Kirill, that they see themselves as being bastions of Christianity and trying to rid the world of the devil?
First of all, let me remind you, 10 years ago on the 9th of May parade in Moscow, there were 4 NATO countries over there. There was military from Poland, from States, from France, and Great Britain. And they were participating in parade, that happened 10 years ago. So it means the West couldn't change in 10 years, and become some fascist Nazis or whatever, that something happens in Moscow. And the Patriarch Kirill, as I see, he doesn't play a role like representative of God on the earth, as my friend said, administration on the earth, It's something what I like to hear from our Patriarch, that he said, stop the war, and we are all equal, etc. Spreading the positive energy, and the guy Kirill, he doesn't do it. And I don't understand what's going on over there. If the church belongs to everyone, I don't understand why they are supportive of war, and why especially they are supportive of war against Ukrainians. And you have Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is even older than Russian Church, And what's going on over there? I don't understand. But something, let me say, and it's very difficult to understand from let's say, far away, and maybe it happens in your war, civilian war, in the States, that you cannot imagine how fast bad energy is exchanging among the people who were living close by. That's very interesting, and now you have a fight and a war, within Ukraine, which was a member of Soviet Union, which had a lot of casualties during the Second World War. More than 1.7 million soldiers died in the Second World War, and about together 8 million civilians of Ukrainians died, in fights in war against fascism, and Hitler. And how they divide themselves, and how they started war with people who were living close by. It's, for me, this is something like for psychology. That's not easy to explain. And that happened also in Yugoslavia before. Especially, for example, in Bosnia, where people were living for the centuries together, and it starts in one day, and you never understand what happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here we are at this juncture in the conflict and the war that's going on with Ukraine. What kind of an outcome do you foresee happening to be able to bring this to a conclusion?
Oh, Mr. Moore, this is the very difficult, very difficult. Really, I read some statements from the high state officials in the States and from Europe also, who are very upset about the position of Putin, because it looks like that he is in no way out. They have to make some way out even for him. And I'm afraid that to predict how that will finalize, it's very difficult. And then also I can imagine that he has to declare some kind of victory. You cannot imagine that in 1999, when we finished the war with NATO, and we left the Kosovo, with our military, President Milosevic, that time he declared the victory, over NATO. It was really easy to understand that we left the part of our territory, and how he will declare the victory, and what he's gonna say, and how he will, after his first goal, when he said demilitarization and denazification, what's going to be his victory, I really don't know. It's very, very difficult to predict, when he's going to be satisfied, and when his voters and people of Russia are going to be satisfied. Yeah. And also, when he will open the sources, open sources, the media, when they will realize what happened, because I think that the people who are not in the big cities, they simply do not know what's going on. They don't know that they have thousands of casualties, maybe more than 15,000. They have a lot of casualties day by day. As I said, between 10 and 12 generals. Come on, nobody remember the war like to lose in 3 months 12 generals. And
that's extraordinary.
They have more casualties in these less than 3 months than whole alliance in Iraq and Afghanistan. All tied and been there. Can you imagine 20 years, was together was 30 few years, they have less in Afghanistan and Iraq than now in Ukraine. It's very difficult.
Well, you have served as Minister of Defense. You know Russia well. And you've come to know Vladimir Putin well. Some of the concepts back here in trying to figure out what he can do. And of course, we keep thinking about, we're using the term off ramp these days. What kind of an off ramp can Vladimir Putin have? But we're hearing things like chemical weapons. And of course, we know that Russia has more nuclear weapons than any country of the world. They may not be as powerful individually as perhaps we have here in the United States, but they have more of them. And so the question is, how does this war evolve? And what must be going on in that brain of Vladimir Putin when, number one, he has now committed himself completely to this invasion, but he does not seem to have gotten the kind of advice that one would think that somebody like Vladimir Putin needs to have to be able to make rational decisions. And so the question is, where does it go from here?
Very difficult. They used some special rockets yesterday or days before in Mariupol. So they used this Kinjal hypersonic rockets, several times. And there were some rumors, and some possibilities that they can use some tactical nuclear weapon, which will be catastrophe for not just for the Ukraine, for the whole region and for the world. But I still believe that even Putin understands that this solution it's very bad for Russian people also. And this is not just a war somewhere there, it's a war in front of his home, and I believe that he wouldn't do it. And I truly think that there are some people around him, who still have some conscience, and who will tell him, listen, guy, this is too much. Even if they are, but when you come to the end, what is your other ability, what. So I'm pretty sure. I won't say pretty, but let's say I'm willing to be pretty sure that he won't use chemical or nuclear weapon. But still, I don't know, and I don't think that anybody knows right now where will be the end of this bloody war. And also, you must understand something, even when they finish the war, this is the start. This is the start, and I remember there was some movie called Charlie's War about Afghanistan, many years ago.
Yes.
Where the U.S. government helped the time Talibani with the stingers, etc. But when they needed to help them about education for the kids and to rebuild the country, they had another focus. I'm afraid that Europe and all other alliances should be very careful and should help the Ukraine to rebuild the country, because the country is fully destroyed. And also, you have to know that Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe. By the GDP, they are the poorest, per capita. This is very, very bad and very sad. So I think that if they're helping them just for the war, that's nothing. They need to think what's going on after all, because the cities and towns are completely destroyed. Infrastructure is completely destroyed. So billions and billions of dollars should be invested in Ukraine to bring back a part of life which was before. So when the war started, we have the new war for better life, and it will be very difficult for them.
Yes, indeed. Well, what you're talking about is what we became so concerned about here in the United States after World War II and putting together the Marshall Plan, and then indeed getting involved with Japan and being able to bring Japan out of the ruins of war. It was very interesting, but I had negotiated the last trade and economic agreement with the Soviet Union. And one of the things that we were particularly concerned about, and there were divides here in Washington as to how to be able to do this, but there were those who said, look, we're coming to the end of the Cold War. The Soviet Union effectively lost the war. And so let's just let them figure out what their future is all about. Let's not get involved. There were those of us who were very much in favor of trying to bring in our business leaders, our executives, to be able to work with the Soviets on how to be able to enter the free market. They had been so inculcated with the notion of a central command economy, they had no idea how to be able to be entrepreneurial in the sense that the West had. They were very entrepreneurial in figuring out how to deal in their daily lives, as we would learn, but trying to figure out how now we stand at the precipice of all this. I can remember when we had a big ceremony, for example, in which we had the negotiations with the Soviet Union at a time when the U.S. Soviet Business Council was meeting. And so we ended up in the Kremlin with 3,000 people over dinner. There was President Gorbachev, there was future Georgian President Edvard Shevardnadze, there was Armin Hammer, some very interesting people in the history of the relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union. But we decided that we would take with us some saplings from the United States that could grow well in Moscow, and that we would plant them and have a ceremony and watch them grow so that it would show the relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union. It would show the business relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union. And so there was a band that played. We had the ceremony. It was lovely. It was terrific. And just a few months ago, we found that those saplings, which had been growing and growing well, have died, and they no longer exist. And so I wrote a piece in a major journal here in the United States talking about this metaphor that unfortunately the relationship has really has died on the vine. And so we have not only to be concerned about Ukraine, but quite frankly, with a country that, as I was saying earlier, that spans 11 time zones, Russia is going to have a very difficult time trying to reintegrate itself globally, economically, for its people. And the standard of living, it is believed that the Russian economy has now contracted in the double digits just in the past few months as a result of all of this. And so the question is, how do they regain what they have lost? And it's all been due to one autocratic ruler making the decision that it was time to invade another country.
That will be very difficult. Take a look, from 2000 to 2020, the US increased population from 300 to 350 million people. At the same period, Russia from 144, they decreased 140 million. Wow. So they lost 2 or 3 million people in 20 years. Right now, they lost 4 million in few months. And those people who left Russia, they should be leaders of Russia. They should be the main train. They are people who can operate not just in Russia and also worldwide. And I'm afraid that the capacity for reforms over there, we are damaging so much right now that we'll see what will happen in the future. And also, I'm not sure that all people over there are happy with this war. As I said, when they open media will be completely different, and people will be very sad. And I remember in 99, we had a war, and I said Milosevic was also 75, 80, 90, I don't know, 120% in favor, and after a year and a half, he lost elections. Before that, he was like a god. So we'll see what will happen in Russia. But anyhow, Russia is very important for whole world, and we see that there are many countries that are now suffering, even very far away from Europe and from Russia. They are suffering now because of food or petrol, etc. So the main key players, in the world, they should find a way how to manage these problems after, and how to manage the problems for all other countries in the world. Mm-hmm. Russia, as you said, 11 zone, but only 140 million people.
Yes.
Yes. Ukraine 45 million. Japan 140 million, almost the same like Russia. Japan is just a piece of cake comparing with the geography of Russia. So this country is empty. There are not so many people in this huge country.
Yes. And how do you envision the future of Serbia with regards to the invasion and what these next few years will bring?
I think that Serbia will be in next months, will be, let's say, completely with the European common foreign and defense policy, security policy. For us, as I said, it's not easy, to put the sanctions like the others, but I believe that this is something what simply we have to do. And let me tell you, in 1992, Yugoslavia at that time, Serbia and Montenegro, we got the sanctions in UN, and the Russians, they voted for these sanctions against Yugoslavia. And we were not angry on them. So I made some articles and I said, why they're going to be angry on us? If we want to secure our interest, and the interest of the future of our country, they shouldn't be angry on us, because we did not put them in this situation. They put us in this situation. And when you start some kind of war or these activities, you have to care about your friends, And Putin shows that he doesn't care about anyone. He cares only about his vision, which is wrong. He cares about his history, which is also wrong history now, because they are learning that they liberate Europe. When it's been they, who are they? I said 1.7 million Ukrainians died, in the Second World War. And the leader of the Soviet Union was from Georgia, was not Russian, from Georgia. So they have to fully change attitude, and I'm not sure it will be possible with Putin on this position. And of course, this is the problem of Russian people. They will faced with this problem. But anyhow, with him, I think that Russia will be expelled from modern world, for many years.
We have just a few minutes left, which I regret very much. But how would you characterize the role that the United States has taken in being able to deal with the Russian invasion?
I pay a lot to United Nations. As a Minister of Defense, we had, I think, 5 or 6 peacekeeping operations where we participating with the blue helmets, and this is something what is very important role of the UN. But in this situation, it shows that the key world players, they have their own agenda, and then the guys who are UN, I cannot say anything wrong about them, because I see that and you see that Putin do not pay any respect on UN, he doesn't care. UN does not have power in a way to prevent the conflict. They cannot share anything besides some kind of aid, and this aid which they can provide is not enough for the Ukrainians. And this time the role of UN will come after all, and I expect they can be in the field, but when the war stops. And as I said, UN has a very important roles throughout the world, but for this moment of conflict, UN really cannot do anything.
And how would you characterize the role that the United States has played in the conflict?
United States play one of the key roles, and it's I must say that I was very much surprised how they managed it, and how European response with them and how they made this alliance very fast. And to be clear, that some politicians in Europe, they were not in favor of this role, but at the end they found that this is their own interest. So the problem is that we are talking now about the problem which is in progress now, but this is something what should be solved 20 years ago or 15 years ago, because if they helped Ukraine to develop faster, before 2014. And I must remind you, in 1994, the Ukrainians, they gave back the nuclear weapon to Russia, and they signed an agreement that they are sovereign and independent country, and the guarantees for this gave Great Britain and the States. They signed this agreement with Russia and Ukraine. At the end, they didn't take it seriously as they should, because I was a Minister of Defense, but I'm not someone who pay a lot of respect to arms. I like peace, but anyhow, to secure the peace, you need arms, in this modern world. And if you ask me months ago is it possible that we have such a bloody war in Europe like this, everybody gonna say, why, what for? But it looks like that you have to be prepared and ready, and if you are prepared and ready, nobody will attack, So I think that the US and the other, they should help them before, not to wait for this conflict. This is something what maybe will be lesson for the future for some other countries. I'm not sure.
Yes, indeed. Well, we've come to the witching hour, and with my incredible gratitude for your spending this time with us. There is not a day that goes by in which our newspapers, our social media, our traditional media are not concerned about what's going on and covering what's happening in Ukraine. I don't think there's a newspaper that has just one story, but they have several stories of what is happening in your part of the world. And I think the concern is going to continue for a while. We're going to the gas stations these days and finding that our gas prices to fill up our cars are more expensive than we could have ever imagined as a result, of what is transpiring. But thank you so much for your insights, your thoughts, and thinking about what the future looks like, not only in that part of the world, but for all of us around the world. So thank you very, very much for joining us, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much, and all the best from Belgrade.
Thank you so much, and from Washington as well. Take care. Bye-bye.